Welcome everyone to the Historic Preservation Commission for September 23rd, 2021. It's 7:10. Quorum being present, the meeting will come to order. The commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority is derived from municipal code of the city of Annapolis, chapter 21, section 56. The HPC operates pursuant to the state of Maryland Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed between or amongst commissioners outside the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. So that's the roll call. Second on the agenda is, I'm sorry, that's the opening. Going back to my agenda, roll call is next. Bill Williams.
Here.
Bobby Collins.
Here.
Will Scott.
Here.
Tim Leahy, I serve as chair. Kim Finch, still trying to dial in, I think. Also with us this evening is John Tower, Chief of Preservation, Office of Preservation. John. And from the our representative from the Office of Law is Cheryl Wood. And Leslie Xavier is joining us. Wonderful. Hi, Leslie. Leslie is not sworn in yet, but I'm very pleased that you're here. She will be a commissioner in the near future once she is sworn in, but we're not voting tonight, so it's wonderful to have you here, Leslie. And also, Kimberly Consoli is our new recorder, and you're very welcome, Kimberly. We're going to have to call you Kimberly because we have a Kim Finch on the commission. So tonight is I'll just say tonight is an administrative meeting. And I don't know whether you've done other, maybe you could introduce yourself. Are you staff to other, or a recorder for other commissions?
I am. So far, I've worked for Planning Commission and Maritime. So this will be my third meeting.
Okay, well.
You're much nicer than them, so.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet everybody.
Well, tonight is an administrative meeting, which means generally we don't have motions necessarily, and we don't vote necessarily, but we do keep minutes. And in particular, we have 3 pre-applications, and I will read to each of the potential applicants that this is an extension, a customary extension. A courtesy to them, and you'll hear me say that. And then at the end, I will try to summarize what the results were, and then I will help you after the fact to summarize those things so they can get.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. So that is the roll call. So going back here to. Next on the agenda, we will have 3 pre-applications. The first is 61 Franklin Street. And so Josh, if you could promote, I guess Maria is here.
You guys hear us?
There we are.
Yep.
There you are. Hi, folks.
How you doing?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to share the screen.
Are we starting to present right now?
Yes, you are. So I will introduce you. As you know, we are in a pre-application mode, and this is a courtesy extended to potential applicants. Just so you know, everything that we discussed this evening, it shouldn't be considered approval or disapproval. And I just need your acknowledgement that you understand that.
We do.
We do.
Thank you. You've been here before?
Yeah.
Just a few times, you know.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Well, tell us, why don't you present your new concepts, and then we will ask for comment from the commissioners, and then ask for comment from John Tower, and then we'll hopefully summarize and give you feedback. So
Certainly. Well,
for it.
we obviously appreciate all of your time and everybody that is joining this evening. We are back for unfortunately, our third pre-app, though we're pretty excited for this application, as we feel we've made substantial changes. For those that can remember, this is a detached garage with a office or accessory space above. We've been working closely with John Tower. So again, John Tower, I'd just like to appreciate the time that you've spent reviewing and discussing with us. We have taken all the previous comments. I think substantially the number one comment was the height into consideration. We've kind of gone back to the drawing boards, and I don't want to say reinvented the design, but we've substantially decreased what we're going to call as the total height, but also I think we've decreased what is the visual mass. We have decreased the height, I'm going to say a total of 3 feet. Maria's going to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, a little bit over.
Yeah, so we've actually decreased the height a little over 3 feet from the previous submission. Our cornice line
Went from 12.6 to 10.
so we've increased that 2.5 feet. We've gone from was originally a 2-car garage door to a single garage door. We've broken the roof plane. We've reduced what was originally 3 dormers to 2 dormers. We've altered the material, so now we are a cedar clapboard siding with a brick water table at the base. I think overall we've substantially changed that, where we are continuing to be subordinate to primarily the main house, but what we also recognize is that we are subordinate to the actual streetscape itself, simply that we are an accessory structure that fronts what are substantially a number of primary single-family main structures. And if we jump to, we have a diagram that will help explain kind of where we were to where we are now. So this is what is the front facade of the structure. So what is in red was our previous submission. And obviously what is below, we can tell that we've substantially decreased it. If we go down kind of below, next elevation, and there's another great graphic. I think this really kind of presents to ourselves that we are taking all comments into consideration. We are trying to truly work with not only the board and John, that we are trying to fit within the context of the neighborhood. And I think if we jump to, do we have additional, I think one comment was additional perspectives of within relationship to the primary house. Here we go. So I think this is a great example. What you're seeing in this first perspective is that is the existing retaining wall is with the fence above. So in terms of scale, you can see we've greatly reduced what is the scale and the nature. And then we're trying to introduce the context of the main house behind. Again, these are perspectives. So while you're looking at some of these and you might say, hey, this looks kind of big compared to the main house. It's a little skewed, but we're trying to give the best observation of how this will be perceived. Was there anything I missed?
No,
Okay, and we actually did reduce, we know the square footage reduced.
well, we lost about 400 square feet.
Yeah, so we reduced approximately about 400 square feet as well. And I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So that's about it. Please let us know if you have any questions or concerns or comments. And we appreciate all feedback.
Well, if I could.
Yeah, John, why don't you comment, and then I'll ask the commissioners. Go ahead.
Okay, very good. So I consider this the culmination of a lot of work together, and it definitely addresses the commission's comments. They've worked hard to reduce bulk. They've broken up the plane at the street. The height is reduced. The cornice height is reduced. This is much closer to complying with guideline B3 regarding building height and bulk. And I want to say good work.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
It's pretty quiet, therefore I think everybody loves it.
Let me disabuse you of that.
Commissioners,
May I, Tim?
of course, go for it.
I do see great progress and an attention to the commissioner's comments, but John's last comment really caught my attention, and that is, I believe you said much closer to complying with the guidelines. Could you clarify that? I'm not sure I understand what you were trying to convey.
Well, this is to a degree, of course, there's some subjectivity here. The issue with, well, let me read guideline B3, and I'll just read part of it. New buildings should respect the bulk and height of neighboring buildings. The facade height and proportions of new buildings should be compatible with the predominant character of other buildings in the streetscape. And this is a broken streetscape. And on one side, you have 2.5-story buildings with a general cornice height at their porches of 9 feet from the porch floor. So this is 10 feet. It's a foot higher. But those buildings are elevated above where this one sits. And so there isn't a clear relationship between this building and a clear visual relationship between this building and the buildings across the street. And so this is a little bit bigger than I would like to see it. But on the other hand, they've broken planes. They've removed some of the different trim that we thought created a false sense of history, and that's what I'm thinking in terms of height. This is about the same height as the garage that was approved at 15 Maryland Avenue, which of course is a large garage. So in relative terms, that's, I think, how it might be assessed. Obsessed.
Well, as you know, John, it's not what we like. As you know, John, it's not what we like or don't like. It is. Do you think that it has an adverse impact on the neighbors?
Well, I said
across the street.
Right.
If you look at this section here, that
it's really disassociated from them. I think if you live across the street, what you'll see of this building, because you will be elevated, is a massive roof, and of course the roof on the street is larger than anything else. So in that respect, the roof of the garage is not designed to be compliant with the surrounding buildings of the streetscape and the adjacent neighborhood.
Tim, I think I could just say now, having heard John's commentary, that those were the concerns that struck me on seeing the new design. It's much improved. It's still not what I would like to see. And I don't mean that like in whether I like the architecture or any of the design elements. Yeah. I still think it's looming too large.
Okay, Bill, what are your thoughts?
Just the relative position of the garage and use of the garage puts it right on the street. It's going to have a massive front. The position of the house across the way, just because of its height, is going to be looking at the roof. It all kind of works against the building itself. I'm kind of looking at it and trying to figure out, they want a 2-story building. This is about as short as a 2-story building you're going to get without starting to look at a flat roof. Now,
I apologize. We're toggling back and forth, just trying to.
No, I think it's appropriate that you move.
And
do you have,
currently looking at HPC Sheet 06, actually. But this one's fine. This one's fine. If you look at
yeah,
06, it has reduced quite a bit. Before, you can see where the ceiling lines are. And sorry, that is my dog I'm about to hang. So pretty much I think we're coming down to is it acceptable to have a 2-story facility here?
yeah. To the applicant, do you have a view looking, I guess, to the east along with the other roof lines along Dean Street to help us understand?
We don't necessarily have a perspective, but we do have a street. Is it an updated streetscape?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what is our diagram for the streetscape. And John, I did just want to point out, since we've last met, I believe one of the comments you said, if we could potentially reduce the height even further, we've reduced an additional foot from our last meeting as well.
I thought so when you were speaking. I thought, okay, that seems like it's a foot more. So thank you.
Here we are at 61 Dean Street and looking at the existing carport, basically, correct? In the upper left.
Yeah.
And this height, if you just draw, again, elevations like this are difficult compared to perspectives, but it is lower.
And the challenge of what you're experiencing at the moment is, we're at the higher end of the street. Therefore,
Yes, yeah, sure.
you're taller than we really are.
And you're also right on the street as opposed to 59 Franklin, which is for south. 16 Dean Street is right on the street.
That is correct.
And you're higher than that.
And 61, of course, is 1 story. It may actually be slightly less the carport. And
Okay.
it's actually below the fence or at the fence. Or the wall, whatever's to the left.
Okay, well, thanks. I just wanted to look at that, and it's sometimes hard to see both sides of the street, and the other side of the street is very high.
Yes.
And the other side of the street does, at this point, look down on the roofs of these buildings.
In the lower corner of what we're showing right now, we're going to zoom in real quick. This is a very good example of context of relationship between the street as well as the houses to the right, and then our proposed structure to the left.
Okay. Bobby, you haven't had a chance to talk yet. What would you like to say? Whoop.
Sorry, I just realized I'm muted. I was not here for the other presentation, so this is the first I'm seeing of this. And I agree that it is smaller than what was proposed before, but to me, as I look at it both on its own and in the context of the buildings that are around it, it still seems quite large. Like the mass of it is just going to stand out more than we would want. And when I say we, I mean the streetscape is going to be adversely affected.
Okay.
So
it sounds like we're still having a problem with a way to view this building in the streetscape. It's almost like we need a drone version. I will chime in a little bit. I think the applicant has done a very good job of listening to us and reducing most of the comments we've had. It is the detailing is much simpler. The finishes are differentiating from the main building, putting the brickwork around the water table, as you called it. It's a little, you've taken away the brackets and simplified it greatly. And I think that you've totally listened to us. And it doesn't compete in terms of detail, but I think we're still hearing other commissioners wondering. And also the other thing you've done is you've broken it down with a hyphen or the roof plane has dramatically shrunk So I'm feeling like you've gone pretty far and close. I think you've done, frankly, for me, you've done enough. But I appear to be the only commissioner who feels that way. So maybe what you need to do is show us from I want to say a drone view or something. I hate to come up with new concepts. You do a great job with three-dimensional drawings, but somehow show us on a streetscape view. We have the two elevations of the street, but what does it look like in a perspective up and down the street with the adjacent buildings?
Got it. That is something that we have not prepared. It's certainly something we could prepare if you feel that would significantly help our. I'm going to use the word argument, but that's not necessarily what I mean.
No, I think it's the case.
And I would like to thank you. I appreciate all your feedback. We've worked very hard to help reduce the scale. Well, we understand there's two aspects of this. It does have to be a usable and functional garage, and there's a space above. And we feel that utilizing a gambrel design reduces what is the appearance and physical scale of the structure versus a two-story, I'm just gonna say a two-story box with a low sloped shed, which we also feel like kind of replicates what was previously approved for the main house. But I mean, I feel like, from here, there's not a lot. I mean, we've truly absolutely tried to cut as much as we could. We've tried to cut all the fat that there is. I wish I could say the same for myself.
Tim?
And Tim, maybe it really is a case of helping us see it the way they want us to see it, I wholeheartedly agree that they've taken great strides in both the design and the size. I'm just having trouble with picturing this building on the streetscape, surrounded by the things that are currently there in everything from a carport to another two-story. I just need more help understanding how this is going to look.
Yes,
And
Will,
Tim?
Will, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I just want to emphasize that I think that the applicants have made a lot of progress and listened attentively to what we've been discussing. So I commend them for that. And what I'm about to say does not mean that I've made up my mind or that I'm trying to be flippant in any way, but this is the kind of situation where you look at it and the applicant's representatives, they're saying, well, they can't cut anymore. They've cut all the fat. You don't even have to have this building. This is what your client has asked you to create. And I understand that and appreciate that. And they have every right to do that. But we have to, and my fellow commissioners may think it odd to hear me say this now, but we have the guidelines to enforce. And at the moment, I don't think that you've met the guidelines with the drone footage or something like that. You might clarify that and make me feel differently. But right now, there's no have to do anything except for us having to enforce the guidelines. So I would remind you of that respectfully.
And I appreciate everything you just identified. Could you please, are there any specific guidelines that you have concerns that you would like to cite that we could review? Because
Mr. Tower cited them.
Yeah, it's
Mr. Tower
B3.
cited.
It's building height and bulk. B3, the first paragraph of B3.
Sure, which I feel like in the context of the streetscape in the neighborhood, we are fit within that context.
Yeah. Here's where we go with things like this as commissioners, the words we like to use. We haven't been persuaded, a group of the evidence, we have not been persuaded yet. So,
Can I?
Yes, Bill.
One thing, again, I want to point out is the wall that's adjacent to it, the adjacent property and where it falls on the building. That wall is right on the street.
That is their wall.
It is their wall. Okay.
That's correct.
But it's an existing wall, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yes. That wall creates more, I believe, more of a canyon than that building would, just because the building is pulled back and the shape of the roof. Now, that's just my opinion. They, of course, have reduced the size of the building. And if I'm not mistaken, because these lots are on two streets the way they are, are referred to as a double front lot.
That is correct.
So in theory, the streetscape could, even though it's not currently, could have developed into a series of small or even full-size buildings on that side.
Some of them did.
Some of
Yeah,
them
it did down the street.
Correct.
did down the street. And this could be defended. I'm still not saying I agree with it, but could be defended as just continuing that streetscape as a developed item as opposed to an open or bricked fenced lot. It is much smaller than what a house probably would be. Again, the second floor is within a roof. If it was a gable structure, it's quite possible it could, the ridge may not be quite as high, but it would lose all of its usability, or most all of its usability on the second level. So with that bit of just rambling, it still comes down to I think it's coming down to, is a second story building acceptable on this street? And considering that there is part of that street that is developed on both sides, it's just a continuation of that aesthetic.
There are second story buildings just two lots down.
So two lots down, if they had shown it, might give a better.
Well, I think if they could
it's
show
actually, it's in this plan.
there you go, right there.
There.
I
16D.
believe other than our existing carport, all of these are two-story structures.
Well, the
Or taller.
16 Dean.
51 Franklin is 3, 22
Where are we looking?
Dean is 2.5.
Well, 16 Dean is 2+, yeah.
Yeah,
16 Dean is taller than the garage you propose.
It's actually a little smaller because it's downhill.
Well, it's from grade, I would.
Yeah, from grade it appears
Usually
to be
it's taken
higher.
from grade.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would have nothing at the top of the hills and tall
Yeah.
things at the bottom. 24 Dean is again 2+.
Yes, it's quite a bit larger.
I mean, it's got half a story up just out of the ground.
And 95 Cathedral is quite
And
large.
Cathedral, of course, is, so there is a precedent for building a taller building on the back of the lot.
At least a 1.5 story or 2-story building, yeah. And I agree with that. That's why I feel that.
And having a better representation of that might well define, because right now we're looking at 61 Franklin with the wall next to it, and it's basically an open lot to the right, I believe.
Yeah.
Small structure to the right, which may be a false impression. I'm gonna have to walk back out there. It's been too long.
Well, I think that what I'm hearing is that the commissioners are in general still not completely persuaded that the scale of this building is within the guideline B3. But if you can Photoshop, Photoshop is a wonderful thing.
Sure.
But we need something looking down and up Dean Street, which we have not seen yet. We have seen the house the garage in relationship to the house, and if I'm not mistaken, we're comfortable that it is a subordinate to the main house, and it's also subordinate in terms of detail, but we're still concerned about the adverse impact on the buildings in 2 to 3 houses up and down the street, and we haven't been able to see that yet, other than the elevations. So if the applicant were to be able to bring back Photoshop of this building in the streetscape, which is feasible technically, I believe.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
That could, what would asking commissioners, is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe that would work.
Okay.
Substantially, do we feel like if we can present that and you can get the impression and feeling that we are not overpowering the streetscape or the neighborhood, do we feel like we would have your support? Because I'm also sensitive to our clients' time and money.
Of course.
And while we are happy to do absolutely anything, and we can do everything under the sun, we can do perspectives, we can do renderings, we can do modeling. We're sensitive to what we want to make sure is that we are getting support. And if we feel that we are relatively getting support, we are happy to propose that and present that.
Mhm.
And what I would also possibly like to hear, do we feel that we have made a substantial change enough that we could proceed to possibly a formal application to possibly get then support and approval? Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, and you'll hear me say, this is a
I know you
pre-application.
can't tell me. I know it's a pre-app.
We've done,
You can't tell me.
honestly, I think we all agree, you've really listened to us, commissioners, would you all agree? And you've worked very hard on this building and on the behalf of your client. And I think there's just one more step that needs to be taken, and whether it needs, so the answer is you've ticked off almost all of the questions we had except one, and that's compliance with B3. And the commissioners are not persuaded yet that it is compliant, but I would say if you wanted to present to John in the interim some concepts of how you would demonstrate that, that would be the next step. How would you demonstrate a streetscape in a perspective view that shows up and down the street, east and west, or north and south? That would be your next step.
Okay.
And it's possible that it could go to final approval, a final application. But let's see how that goes first.
So, okay, so what I'm hearing is you would like us to come back to another pre-application demonstrating that for what we'll say is a better sense of the context.
I think that would be the best step. Yes.
Okay.
And then yes, that would be the best step, because I think the majority of the commissioners are still concerned about the mass compliance with B3.
Tim, may I have one more comment?
Of course, Bill.
I would not depend on a drone because it would give.
I'm kidding.
The height.
I was
We
just,
want this at eye view.
no, I meant, I really meant a drone, like a very short drone, like R2-D2.
A hover drone.
No, but Photoshop is a wonderful thing, and you could easily Photoshop this into the streetscape, I think.
Mhm.
And that would, I think, one more step, and you've got it. One more step.
Got it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's feedback and time.
All right. So
Thank you.
Kimberly, what I will do now is summarize the comments of the commissioners and therefore the next steps for the applicant. So regarding this application, the commissioners acknowledge the progress that the applicant has made regarding detail and height and bulk and breaking down the scale of the building. Also, it is subordinate to the main house in greater detail. Nonetheless, the bulk of the building on the streetscape, on the Dean Street streetscape, is still a concern of the majority of the commissioners. And in regard to guideline B3, we feel it's important for the applicant to persuade us further with evidence, with streetscapes looking up and down the street with this building simulated in the streetscape to persuade us that it is a compliant application. So still needs a little bit more work until it is feasible under guideline B3. Commissioners, was that an adequate summary?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay,
All right, thank you all.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, John.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Presbyterian Church 171 Duke of Gloucester. Josh, can you promote James Nelson, John Jameson, Steve Finn? Okay. Oh, there's Jackie Rouse too. Hi, Jackie. She's been here. Okay, so
Good evening, Tim.
hi, Jackie. All right. This is a pre-application for 171 Duke of Gloucester, and I'm not sure who the spokesman will be, but a pre-application is courtesy extended to potential applicants regarding design review, and it should not be considered a approval or disapproval in any way, and any recommendations that we make may or may not be involved in your final presentation, but it shouldn't be construed as an approval. Do you understand that? Can one of you acknowledge that, please? John?
Yes, I acknowledge that.
All right, thank you. All right, so over to you. Please tell us what you'd like to know, and then we'll ask John Tower for comment, and then I'll turn it over to commissioners for further comment.
Okay, well, I'm facilities manager at the church, so I was the creator of the application, the draft that you have, and hopefully this is much simpler than the last one. We have a failing slate roof on the main sanctuary building that we need to do something with, and our request is to replace it with a standing seam metal roof. And the majority of the building originally had that, and so it could be done under administrative review. But the front part where the steeple is was an addition in the 1940s, and it was the existing roof that's there now was put on the entire building when that was created. And so since that was slate from the get-go, we need HPC approval to take the entire roof to the standing seam metal. And our main reason for wanting to do that is one of the design goals when the steeple was built was to have one uniform roof line. And so it seems appropriate to have one uniform roof line all with the same material. And candidly, the other reason is slate is a lot more expensive, and we don't have an extra $150,000 laying around we don't know what else to do with. So that's it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Steve Finn is here from our contractor. So if you have any questions about roofing material or how they're going to do it or anything, certainly he can speak to that better than I can.
Might add that there's another portion of our church that already has a metal roof that is on our chapel that was approved a number of years ago.
Okay, so Bill, go ahead, Bill.
Do you have any photos of the church with the standing seam?
I
haven't taken time to hunt.
I do not. I don't.
The church.
The reason we were told by the city, John Tower's predecessor, actually, that the Sanborn documents and stuff show that it was at one time a standing seam metal roof.
The Sanborn instead of standing seam. Okay.
Bill, you have a wonderful book here, The First 100 Years. And
just hand it through the camera. Just hand it through.
Reach out and touch it. And John Jameson gave this to me. I also researched on the Sanborn maps, and there are pictures where you can see the standing seam, although I don't think that they're presenting them tonight.
But there are existing pictures?
There are pictures, and there's at least a picture, and there's also a reference to it in the notes that and the minutes that the church took discussing its removal in the 1940s.
Is there, in the image, is it a possibility to get an idea of the spacing of the seams? What I'm thinking.
That I don't know, but
my thinking is if they're going to put it back, it would be good to see it put back as close to its historical reference as possible. That's where I was going with that, rather than drag this out.
That level of detail might be difficult. We also have aerial views of the church. I mean, the standard was always a 16-inch to 17-inch pan with a 1 to 1.5 inch standing seam. And I would imagine that was the case. Also, the original structure that it sat on was a theater, which was converted into the church, and they had a very imposing front structure that was removed in the 1940s and replaced with what we see today.
Yeah,
and that's when it all went to slate.
Yeah. So I'll kind of jump ahead a little bit, but what we're asking here from the applicant is to provide that progression of the building and its changing roof materials. John can help you, but it would be helpful for your application to say, here's what it was, here's when it changed in the 30s, or here's when it changed in the, I don't know when it changed. But if you're removing something that is not contributing or historical in nature, you're on a good foundation. If you're removing something that is 60 to 70 years old, then you have then we have a compliance problem. If I understand the history of this building, the area closest to Duke Gloucester Street is not contributing, and that roof is quote unquote relatively new. So that slate roof is not more than 50 years old, or more than before 1942, actually. Before 1942. It's
1947.
Okay. 1942 is our cutoff year for historical significance.
Then we just made it.
And that would be the whole roof, all the slate, with the exception of the steeple itself, correct?
Yeah, correct. That's what we would like. That's what it is right now. It's all slate. We would like to take it to all metal, and most of it was metal prior to 1947.
Yeah. But if
it was all
remains as slate, I'm sorry.
We would, yes, the steeple would remain as slate. It's in pristine condition. It's such a steep slope. It's in great shape.
Right. So we're only talking about the gable roof.
Yes.
Well, documentation about when the slate was put on would be extremely important for our decision.
Okay. We can add that.
Could I read from the report on the reconstruction of the church from 1945? Just so that you could hear, it is actually documented. There has been one unforeseen major expense as work developed. It became apparent that the old tin roof on the church is no longer serviceable and must be replaced. This entails an additional expenditure of $5,400. Don't you wish it were that now? Your officers believe they have not exceeded their commitments, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, the applicant could put that in their application.
Okay.
Yep. Just want to say it's there.
Yeah. And evidence of prior, what they call tin roofs, are important. So I'm talking about Bobby. Bobby or Bill? Other thoughts or Will?
Not for me, as long as we have some documentation that helps us understand, what the historical part of the roof is, and when that happened and why that happened, then I think we have a leg to stand on. So.
Yeah. And then the other important thing is the actual specification of the new standing seam roof. Thankfully, there are now products available that comply with our standards, and they don't look, as we say, it doesn't look like a bank branch with aluminum flat roof with a cap on it. And just all the details about that, especially along the ridge, are very important. So I'm sure Steve Finn, who was on my roof 2 weeks ago, can tell you, can provide those details. What is the name of the product now that is being used?
Steve, can you?
Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button. What's the question? The product being used?
The new product that is hand tooled in the field for standing seam.
So we have a metal machine that bends it into a historic panel, which is a 17-inch panel with a 1-inch rib height, and that gets fully folded. So they do the first bend basically with a machine, and then the next bend is done with a hammer and an anvil.
Yeah, exactly.
And they pound the seam down. John Jameson, I know I sent you some pictures today of other houses or buildings, should I say, in downtown Annapolis that have the same profile and the same tooling method.
Okay. Right. Well,
Excuse me,
we'll
Steve.
attach a couple of those photos to the updated application.
And the product spec for the
I
application.
think we already have
I think
that.
it's already in there. Yep.
Steve, is that a standing seam or a folded seam? You said they pounded down on the fold.
So it's a standing seam. It's a 1-inch
It is a
historic
standing.
seam.
Okay.
Correct. But it's folded twice, and that's why we have to use 26 gauge steel. The 24 gauge steel would crack on the seam.
No,
So-
I understand. This is when you said folded down, I was picturing it as a flat seam folded to the deck.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. Okay, then I think I'm ready to summarize. We have been talking about our guidelines, and the guidelines we're referring to are D9, which has to do with overall character of roof structures. Clearly, this is a gable roof, and it has been in existence. And roofing materials for historic buildings. This is a situation where we're replacing a current slate roof with a standing seam metal roof, which is still appropriate within the historic district. So that does comply with D9. And I think that the other thing we are recommending to the applicant is that they provide in the application the progression of the addition towards the Duke of Gloucester Street side to understand when that roof was actually created over the narthex, I guess is the correct word.
Right.
So just provide a little more history in your application, and John can help you with John Tower can help you with the details of that, and he will amplify that in the staff report. But
One other
yes,
thing.
Bill.
Color.
Yes, you'll want to be clear about the color. Any evidence of historical color would be important.
Anything we have in terms of records about the metal roof are just grainy black and white photos. So
Yeah.
I'm not aware of anything that documents color. Our thinking was to go with a slate gray type of color so that it wouldn't change the look of the existing building that much from the streetscape perspective.
I was just hoping you wouldn't go with IHOP blue. That's all.
My
It would be
grandfather
important.
wanted pink, but,
Yes, I think overall character is important, and not having an adverse impact on the roofscape of the city is the important part. So it's such a large roof. But just specify what you intend to do in your application, and I think then we can discuss it.
Okay.
But not blue or well, whatever is normal. So, I mean, whatever is appropriate for the material that you're proposing would be wise.
Aesthetically correct for the period.
Yes.
How about that?
Yep, enough said. So, but they, on small residences, they would paint them red. So I wouldn't, for whatever reason, the old roofs were painted red. I don't know whether it protected them more or not, but this is a massive thing, and these are new materials. So I'm pretty sure the color is baked in to the material.
I believe the historic red was iron oxide, and it's because it was a very cheap paint at the time.
That's a bit of an aside.
Mhm.
Okay. Have we provided you, John, Jim, and Steve, enough for you to move forward to an application?
I believe so,
Yes,
yes.
I believe so.
All right. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Kimberly, as I said, I will summarize this in an email to you, so you have, instead of just kind of random thoughts, I'll give you the summary. Okay, thank you very much. And we look forward to a full application.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is market space. Going back to the agenda, market space. Outdoor dining plan review. Let's see who is here to promote. Oh, I see Jody, Kevin. Okay, Jody and Kevin. Anyone else is going to, Jeremy, I see Jeremy now too. All right, who is, well, first of all, let me ask who's taking the lead here.
Tim, I will. Jeremy Black here. I own Federal House.
All right, Jeremy, thanks.
Absolutely.
And this is a pre-application, and it is a courtesy extended to potential applicants. Please understand that anything that we discuss this evening in terms of your design shouldn't be construed as approval or disapproval. And we are here to provide feedback on your proposal. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir. Completely understood, and we appreciate the opportunity to get the feedback.
Okay, so tell us, we have some drawings in front of us.
Yep.
And if you have other things you can present, that would be great. If not, tell us what you'd like to know, then we'll ask John to comment, and then we'll have a discussion among the commissioners and then summarize.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. So, you know, as most of you are likely already know, we've had our public hearing in front of City Council for the leases to market space so that we can continue the outdoor dining in that area. We although the vote hasn't happened, we've definitely felt it necessary to continue to take this next step through HPC. We're very hopeful that those leases get approved and that we can, beginning in November, continue the outdoor dining that has helped us survive the last 18 months. You said something about additional material. I don't have anything additional tonight than the 9 pages that are here. Really, the 3 things that we would like to discuss tonight or get your feedback on tonight are number 1, excuse me, sorry, my light went out, are number 1, the general table layout and flow of traffic through the area. And I mean pedestrian traffic, obviously, through the area. Number 2, the materials to be used and where the walkway barriers are to be placed. And then number 3 will be the construction or material used on the planters that will be placed to dissuade low-speed vehicles from entering our area. the proposal that everyone hopefully has in front of them is relatively simple. Dan Douglas has done this for us. As we look at page 1, simply gives us a pencil drawing type overview. The walkways are the dotted or starred areas there. There are 3 of them, and then there's actually a small gold one towards the bottom between the Federal House area and the Market House area that was added late, which is why it doesn't look the same as the other walkways. But those are all, one of them is 6 feet wide, 2 of the other ones are 4 feet wide, and we are proposing that there be a barrier made of wood, natural wood, as well as 2-inch nautical rope connecting those wood pieces, and you'll find a photograph of that all the way down in slide number 9 or page 9 on that proposal. The square items on that proposal that are to the exterior as you cross Randall, and then as you come to the end of Cornhill and out into Market Space, are the planter boxes that are being proposed. There are 2 of those on page 9 as well, and they're also incorporated into the renderings on pages 2 through 8. The reason that there are 2 of them there is in a meeting with the city that we had a couple of months ago, Mike Lyles presented me. I brought him a bunch of thoughts with what those barriers, those planters would look like. And he presented me with a company called Earth Planter, which is those gray ones that you'll see in drawing number, page. It's in pages 3, 4, 6, and 7. They're the gray drawings. Those, however, are made of plastic. And I didn't know whether or not that was going to fly with anything in HPC, although I received it as a suggestion from a city official. So I included it, but I also put in the cedar box as well as a possibility, because I thought that would more likely be the item that got approved with respect to what those planters look like. That honestly, that's, I don't want to take up a ton of your time. That really is in a nutshell what we're looking at today and what we're hoping to get some feedback on today. We do realize that furniture and potential shade coverings are going to have to be addressed as we move forward. But we've chosen to do that at a later time and just start with those first 3 items.
Okay. Well, real quickly, I'll set the table a little bit and then ask John to comment. Regarding the table layout and the spacing, that's really not within our guidelines to judge or evaluate. I believe that other city departments would need to decide on that just as they would on an interior building. I believe that's accurate. John Tower, would you agree?
Yes, I do agree.
And the size of aisles and things like that, we don't have anything in our code which dictates that. And I think that the second item you mentioned was material, and what is it's unclear to me what paving, are you changing the paving? Are you putting down paving for any of these aisles or?
No, sir. No, none of the height or material of the walking areas change at all. The second item on the list was simply the barriers that will be used on the walkways. We figure that those are some sort of furnishing type of an item, so that we needed to make sure that if HPC needed to weigh in on what those were made of, again, they're meant to be natural wood and 2-inch nautical rope to maintain the kind of the theme of the sailing town. And we just wanted that before we took any steps and made any purchases, that we kind of dotted all our I's, crossed all our T's.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about the materials of any kind of barriers or separation. And the third was the planters. So
yes, sir.
Just to go back right now, if I understand what you just said, these tables are pretty much going to be placed on the existing asphalt
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so you're not proposing any material change for the street
No,
or
sir.
the sidewalks?
No, sir.
Okay. So then the materials for any kind of separation, and then the planters. So we can discuss the materials for those two things.
Yes.
So therefore, John, would you like to comment on the barricades? And I think the only ones you mentioned were that the dotted line, the brown dotted line that goes from the State House or from the Market House out. Where else are these barricades?
There are 4 walkways.
Partitions.
Yeah, 4 partitions, walkways that are built into the plan. One is between the interior corner of Market House and Middleton's. There is one from that same interior corner of Market House across towards Iron Rooster.
Okay, so where the kind of looks like brick areas are.
Those are walkways, and then that last one is that little brown one that we added last minute, and that simply separates the Federal House dining space from the Market House dining space and provides another egress and another walkway for the general public.
So there's 3 areas.
4 total.
Okay.
There's a 4th that is dotted.
Got it. I see it now. Thank you. And those are presented down in the last slide with rope, the 4x4 with rope around it.
That's correct.
All right,
Jeremy, I'm speaking out of turn here a bit, but how would
you're on, John, over to you. You're not
okay. Well, if it's over to me, then first of all, let me say thank you to the applicants for bringing this pre-application. I've been talking with you, I think, for a year and a half. It's been quite some time. I think this was first brought up by Eric Evans, and he had a very different concept of awnings and enclosures, and it has evolved into a more open sidewalk cafe plan. And I certainly appreciate that evolution. I do wonder, just from the details that we will be discussing tonight, how would you affix the posts that would carry the ropes? How could they become, let's say, a fixture? Because all I see is what appears to be a 4x4. So that's just a question.
Yes, sir. And I have the answer for that. That's that photograph actually made the little proposal towards the end as we kind of last couple days emails as to what we were gonna be discussing tonight. So I've discussed that with a couple of folks, and we think the best way to do that is with an X base, also made out of wood, so a cross member base that all those 4x4s get attached to, and we plan to sink a small weight into the bottom of that so that it stays upright.
Okay, interesting.
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I kind of ask a clarifying question about the timeline for this? Jeremy, November 1st, we know is a deadline, November 1st or November 30th.
It's the 1st.
It is the 1st, okay.
Yes. And
you're interested in having this layout actually put in place from November 1st forward?
No, not necessarily. The way the lease agreement is written up, if and when that agreement goes through City Council, is that the layout will be allowed to remain the same. We won't have to change furnishings or have all the final changes made until March 1 of 2022.
So I'm still not quite understanding when this plan would be implemented.
Anytime between November 1 and March 1, 2022.
Okay, you have all that. Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
I do need to draw everyone's attention to our guidelines, which specifically say that sidewalk cafes shall be open to adjacent walks and should not be enclosed or partially enclosed by fences, planters, barriers, lattice, railings, or ropes of any type.
So could I speak
We're
here?
proposing here. You can, John. Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
honestly, this is, I think everyone knows this is unprecedented. There is no equivalent for this. That we have a large and important public space within the historic district that is going over to a private lease and is going to have open dining. It's similar to a sidewalk cafe, but it's different at the same time. And yes, the guidelines definitely have conflicts with what you've proposed. There's no question. On the other hand, there do have to be traffic barriers. So
well, let's just stick with we have a challenge. I want to point out just a challenge with what we're asked to do. And I agree there can be flexibility. There's a should statement here rather than a shall. And you raise a point. Is this under these guidelines, or do we need to change our guidelines to acknowledge public spaces with standards in a public space? So, and
yes,
Will, you had your hand up.
Yeah,
Tim, that's our response to that, Tim. And I appreciate the sidewalk cafe guidelines. We've been operating under them for 16 years on our sidewalks.
Yeah.
Again, our argument to that and what we would try to persuade you to think is that is with us that these are no longer sidewalk cafes, that our sidewalk cafes would remain the same as they were, and this becomes something new and unprecedented, as John said.
But the rationale for design guidelines would still exist, and there was some rationale about material choices, design choices that we would influence.
Yeah.
Will has his hand up. Oh, sorry, Will.
Thank you, Tim. My question is directly related to what we're now discussing, and I want to preface the question by saying that as a resident, I think I would have a very liberal and open-minded approach to this application. But as a commissioner, Tim, you've already pointed out the very, very large barrier, in my opinion, to us approving this to go forward. So my question is straight to Mr. Black. In the lease that you are negotiating with the city, does it treat the spaces between the tables as public spaces or your private space? In other words, could I just stroll through and say hello to you or any friends I might encounter as though I were walking by a sidewalk cafe? Or would you have someone who would stop me from entering and ask if I was wanting to be seated?
The answer to that question is it is to be treated, to the best of my knowledge, and I will find out 100% for sure, but to the best of my knowledge, that because we are leasing that space from the city, that space then belongs to us during operating hours.
Yeah, I perfectly understand your need or desire for that, and I'm not going to question it, but that certainly makes me say this isn't a sidewalk cafe, and I am uncomfortable unless I get legal advice and advice from Mr. Tower that it can be considered as such. So I go back to what our chairman said. Doesn't sound like we can approve this. I think that's what you were saying, but I don't want to speak for you, Tim.
Well, I think that it becomes new territory for us. We don't approve table widths. We don't approve materials inside of an establishment. It's a new area for us, and we're going to have to figure it out with the Office of Law, I think. So.
Yeah. So that's really what I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm opposed to your application or anything that you've presented.
Yeah, I agree. It isn't really an outdoor public space either. Therefore, it's just it's an area that we don't understand. And so we need to react to it, which is fine. And this is, as John said, this is new territory for us. we would like to influence because it is in the public view, particularly as you will eventually want some kind of fabric above this. Once you go above, once you introduce umbrellas or something, we will want to have guidelines on that, thinking out loud.
That my understanding is that it is working on the guidelines for coverings, for shading. That's why they're not in this proposal at all. I didn't want to put them in here.
Well, we appreciate you coming at this point for this part because you will want to come back for the other. So Bill Williams has a question.
And the way I understand this is we're making a permanent change to a historic space that has been open to the public and traffic for 300 years. Is that what we're considering?
Correct.
Okay, we got a correct from Mr. Black and a no from Mr. Dank. So these chairs are going to go away off and on during the year. It's going to be open to traffic and people walking through on a regular basis. And similar to the way West Street is, it's closed one night every week or so.
No, that's not correct.
So you're looking for a permanent change to a historic space.
The lease is not permanent. The lease has a termination period to it when the city dock action plan takes place, but it is to get us from here to the city dock action plan being introduced and completed.
So this is a temporary action. It's temporary in the lease and has a defined point that cannot be renewed.
I think that's pretty strong language. Hi, can everybody hear me?
Well, we're talking about a major change.
Yeah, Jody, yes, we can
hear you. It is a 300-year-old public space for traffic, for people, for general use. And I just heard you say that those spaces, once leased, become the leased property to the restaurants. Is that correct?
So yeah, sorry. Let me just jump in real quick. I'm Jody with the Market House. I think we have to keep in mind that this is also it's a work in progress. It's a temporary lease, and the city. One of the reasons we scaled back some of our ambition from our first presentation with the platforms and the umbrellas and everything is because the city is going to be going in here and doing work, substantial work, public works, and digging up the brick and putting down brick. So it's going to be closed on and off for, during the next 3 years. And so we have a 3-year lease with the city. And then, according to the master plan and according to the city's desires in the future, if it all goes well, we'd like to incorporate some kind of public-private partnership so that we do have a work in progress with the city, with the master plan for tables and chairs and things out there. But right now, this is sort of it's a step to get us through the construction of the garage and to further implement the city's master plan, which does call for dining and tables and chairs and an open air sort of non car related area.
Yeah.
So
what I hear, Bill,
that is down towards the dock. That is not here. And as far as getting us past the garage, this is taking away parking. And the other thing is, if I go over to Moe's or Mission Barbecue and decide I want to come over here and sit down, I can't sit down. So that is not a public space as the other space down at the dock would be.
Sure,
I hear your point.
Again, this is a historic space. It has to do with view shed, relationship to the space of the public, the businesses that are not restaurants. And it's been great that the city has been allowed restaurants to expand outside, considering everything that's going on. With any luck, that will be gone by next spring. If we look at what's down there right now with the tents, with the umbrellas and everything, it is something, again, that we would review later on. But right now, it's a jumbled mess. And when you start looking at the tents, they're blocking the views that are the historic nature of the city. And you're asking us to
Bobby has something to say.
I've been sitting here for the last 10 minutes trying to figure out how to word it. And I'll have to be honest, I'm 110% behind what Bill Williams is saying. that is, he is summarizing my exact concerns. You know, everything from the fact that this is a public space. You used to be able to walk through this area and now you can't. You used to be able to see the beauty of the buildings that are in the market space area, the historic buildings. You cannot do that now. They're talking about getting approval for the tables and chairs now, and then there's going to be you know, umbrellas or coverings, then there's going to be heaters, then there's going to be signage, then there's going to be sandwich board. It's what is going on downtown in market space and on Main Street. I totally understand how it came to be, but I personally am looking forward to November 1st, because when I go downtown during the day, no one's in these restaurants. We've got all these abandoned looking sidewalk cafes going up and down Main Street and sitting down in Marketplace. The minute the temperature drops below about 55 degrees, nobody's going to eat outside. Even if you put heaters out there, at a certain point, people simply aren't going to come, and you will have destroyed, and I don't mean that in the harsh sense that sounds, but you will have forever changed that whole section of the best part of City Dock. Not the best part, the best historical experience part of City Dock.
Well, Bobby, I think you used the right word, destroy the ambiance of the space.
Yeah.
The space belongs to the restaurants.
Right. I think that, thank you for your input, and I hope the applicant hears these things. I think it's what we're really saying is the concept behind the lease is a problem in the first place. I think that needs to be communicated to City Council, especially in the concept that the public could not move through this space, would be asked to sit or asked, how does the public move through this space? Pedestrians, much less cars.
They move through the walkways and the existing sidewalks.
I thought you said that they would be asked, were they going to sit and dine?
I did not. The gentleman asked, what did I feel like that I would have the right to do that based on the way the lease was structured? And the answer to that was yes, but that is just the same way as someone that walks inside of my restaurant. I do not stop them at the front door and tell them that it's a requirement to sit and dine.
But if they sit at the stage, you're one of those tables.
I think I just need to say that our code, our role is to evaluate a proposal presented to us from the design guidelines point of view. The conversion of a public space, which has been public for 300 years, to a private space, which is what is proposed here, is a discussion that needs to be taken up with City Council. And I personally agree with Bill. I oppose it. But that needs to come to City Council. And you had a hearing a week and a half ago.
Correct.
So once you get to that point, there are issues, I believe, that we still need to discuss about the design, and it, you know, how. So we were on point talking about the barriers, and the barriers right now. All we have is our sidewalk cafe guidelines, which were approved. So we have those as a basis for our design.
Sure.
And right now, your proposal would not be feasible with rope. A great example of a plastic planter, the other question you had, versus a wooden planter. Also, planters are actually not feasible either by our current guidelines.
So where do the planters come from on the opposite side of Market House?
You know what? I'm not even going to respond to that. I don't know. We did not approve them. So can you tell me that? I don't know.
No, I have no idea.
John,
Jody, do you have any idea? I mean,
You know,
I think
They were
that
not
Dan
reviewed.
Douglas is putting in an application for those.
After
so
the fact.
so they shouldn't be.
Yes.
All right, well, so don't go there. I mean, honestly, Jeremy, people are
No.
doing things without approval. So just because someone did something doesn't mean it's approved.
I understand that. And the reason I asked that question is because I don't know that you didn't, that you didn't approve that. So I was simply asking that to say, hey, if
No,
that
now I'm
was,
telling you we didn't.
and I
It was
understand,
never submitted.
understand.
And that brings up part
And I'll
of
just-
the issue with the current situation down there with, if you don't mind the term, the COVID restaurants, is things are going on that aren't being approved. They're just
Okay.
happening.
And we
Well-
understand, we completely understand. I think all of us understand that we're in an emergency until November 1st. Once we are past November 1st, we need to get back.
Misunderstood is we're in an emergency for a long time. This is not a November 1st emergency. This is for the businesses downtown. This is a long-term emergency.
I'm not going to argue, or I understand. I'm just talking about the actual rules that I understand. If the quote unquote emergency, meaning that rules are relaxed during an emergency. That's what we've
Understood.
done for almost 2 years.
Sure.
That's the emergency I'm talking about. You have a financial emergency. I get it. But we are here to try to help implement the rules that the community has put in place. That's our volunteer job.
Understood.
So, okay, so we can take the temperature down a little bit. I'm going to try. I'm sorry if I got, but right now we don't have very much information about this proposal that we can respond to, other than the fact that the partitions you're proposing are not compliant, and the materials possibly for the planters possibly are, but plastic wouldn't be. That's all we can really tell you. We appreciate the fact that you're floating this by us right now and getting feedback. That we want to continue the conversation.
Yeah, and Tim, we want to, as the 5 stores down there that are involved in this situation, we're here because we would like things to be agreeable between everybody that's involved with this. You know, we're not here trying to push any agenda down anybody's throat. We are simply trying to make sure that if this gets done, if these leases get approved, that we can then begin to move forward and put the proper furnishings and the proper whatever, the proper setup in place to make those happen.
Right.
Yeah, and if I could just real quick, Tim, a lot of these things that are going on are also in conjunction with the city and their city initiatives. The trees were a city initiative. And so, you know, the fact that they're not, I don't know why there was miscommunication there. And so Dan Douglas is going in after the fact and going to apply for that. But
no comment.
Right. So, but you know, it shouldn't be laid on any of the restaurants here or the market house because it's a city initiative. So separate issue. I just want to lay that out there. And then we also have to remember the world has changed and Annapolis has to change along with it. And I know it's been 300 years and I can hear that. But, you know, the city is going forward, or we hope that they are, with some of these leases. And all we're trying to do is make it look better, to make it more appealing, and to bring more customers and more visitors downtown. It doesn't look good now. We all agree that. And that's why for 1.5 years, we've tried to remove the parking barriers, the tents, and to try to make it better. But, you know, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, and we understand it doesn't happen all at once. You know, but we're trying to work with historic preservation and historic Annapolis and the city and the residents and try to make it as appealing as possible. And so, you know, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate that, but our role is the Historic Preservation Commission. And we are tasked by the community through code to execute our role. And not everybody would agree with not everybody would, some people agree with one side, some people. So we
Sure.
just need, we want to continue I think we all agree, I'm speaking for the commission. We want to continue the conversation. But when we tell you that you're not compliant, you need to understand that you need to change your design or your approach. And that's we're trying to influence your direction. I think we're trying to tell you your direction is not right now feasible with what we would consider preservation guidelines.
And you're discussing the rope walkway barriers currently.
As
Yes.
one example, and the planters are also and now that's all we have to talk about right now. But you eventually are going to need some kind of shelter.
Correct.
Yes, Will.
If I can comment briefly, a lot of times on the planning commission, we face a similar situation. That is, an applicant came in with something that I, as an individual commissioner, and perhaps other commissioners there would feel, as I think some of us do here, as I do here. And that is, the concept is one that I would like to see move forward. But there are the guidelines that we are bound legally to uphold. That's our only option right here. I cannot approve something that violates the guidelines. And Jody and Jeremy and all the others involved that they're representing are doing really what I think is the only thing they can do. They're going to the city council that can change those guidelines and working through the process. And I appreciate that. So all I can say is right now with my planning commission hat on, this doesn't seem feasible. It doesn't mean I don't support it, don't like it, don't want you to continue to work with the council, and maybe there will be changes. And I, as much as anybody, I think, in the meeting tonight, well, I was on the City Dock Task Force. I'm on the Maritime Task Force. The city is changing. I want it to change. It needs to change. Every living city's change and grow. But right now, that's where I am. Doesn't meet the guidelines. I can't support it.
I do have some public comment to read into the record as well. We didn't get anyone signed up for live testimony, which we do allow now. But so I'd like to read from Karen Brown at Historic Annapolis. So I'll just read this, and maybe it's a good way to just reiterate some of the things we're saying. Historic Annapolis is sympathetic towards the city and the restaurateur's desire to expand outdoor seating options. We also support the desire to improve the temporary alfresco dining arrangement that is now in place and was established in response to the COVID pandemic. We believe that open air dining experience helps activate the streets and can contribute to a vibrant, healthy downtown. However, Historic Annapolis has been part of a multi-year community-based planning effort that culminated with the City Dock Action Committee plan. Currently, the city has hired a consortium to carry out that plan, which envisions a renewed city dock that's greener, more resilient, and more welcoming. Market Square is included in the project area and is an essential component. The consortium's vision includes flexible use space to serve a variety of purposes and a united, cohesive brand and image that's carried. It's not clear if the concept being proposed reflects a larger effort that's being championed by the city through the CDAC implementation team. The final design should reflect a united concept championed by the full business community along Dock Street, Market Street, and Main Street. Additionally, the design must meet the sidewalk cafe guidelines and HPC guidelines in general. The HPC seeks inviting improvements to the streetscape that are not cluttered. This space cannot support 136 tables or more. And additionally, the relationship between the street and the sidewalk disappears, and the tables and chairs monopolize the entire space, leaving little space in between impeding movement. We also have concerns with egress and blocking the street from a life safety perspective. As you know, our offices are located on Pinckney Street, and egress issues that we currently face with blocking the street would be exacerbated by this new permanent design. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. So that actually touches on a few of the points we talked about. So reflecting that real quickly, 3 years is the term of the lease being proposed.
The lease being proposed is an initial 3 with an additional potential 3 or whenever the City Dock action plan gets implemented on market space.
I believe the City Dock action plan is supposed to be implemented by 2026, which is 4 years away.
Yes, and market space is slated to be one of the last things touched, which is why the potential extra 3 is in that lease.
This lovely home.
And,
whoops.
And we also agree with Ms. Brown's assessment that this is a work in progress and that it's going to be changed. And we hope to incorporate a better al fresco dining experience and public area in that space when the City Dock Action Committee is actualized. But until then, 2026 or 2028, it's a long way away, and we need to stay open and survive and keep doing things. So, you know, that's where we're coming from, and that's why we're going to the city. And we know people want to sit outside. I mean, they want to.
How do you respond to her point that it changes the basic structure of the street and the sidewalk and the relationship between the two? Because I think it fundamentally changes those.
I would agree that it does change it, but I would say that it needs to change because it's a parking lot right now, and it shouldn't be. And it's a drive-through parking lot that backs up cars everywhere. So, you know,
again, to Bill's point, it's a historic thoroughfare and sidewalk structure, and is now you're proposing that it be changed into a restaurant. So that's a big change. That's a big change. So I guess that's where I'm coming from a feasibility point of view. And our guidelines would talk about preserving the streetscape of the city, and that does fall within our guidelines.
But Tim, we just talked about, and this is all I'll say because we're obviously not agreeing. We just talked about how the City Dock master plan that Will is on and a lot of other people on foresee a different change and a different use in this area. They don't foresee it as a throughway or a parking space.
I believe they view it as a flexible space, which is open and closed at different times.
Right, flexible space.
So, and what you're proposing is not a flexible space
for now, but in 3 years from now, it might become again. We don't.
Now it may continue in 3 years.
I'm sorry.
In 3 years from now, it may become another 3 years. Yeah. We just heard.
Yeah, but in a year or two from now, it's probably going to be dug up with bulldozers right there. So, I mean,
all we can do is evaluate a proposal that's in front of us, and right now, the proposal in front of us has feasibility issues. So
right. So, but what I'm saying, you guys understand, there's a lot of construction that's going to go on in the next 5 years there, a lot, and so it's going to be closed, open, closed, open. It's really only, you know. We said we'll take whatever the city will get us, and they can shut us down at any time. Is in the leases. So for months at a time. We asked them not to do it during summer, but we'll see. So it is sort of a malleable work in progress.
Yeah.
We're working with them.
Okay, well, again, I do appreciate your coming and having this conversation because I think it's ongoing. But right now, what we have in front of us is only a sketch of tables in the street and some concepts which, in terms of partitions and planters. And again, would you mind if anyone else have any more comments, or can I summarize?
Tim, I have one last comment, and if you just wouldn't mind including it in your summary, that would be great. My last comment is where do I go and what route do you believe that I have to take in order to get some of those guidelines potentially adjusted for that space?
I can tell you.
Yes, sir.
You need to go first to the Ward 1 alderman and then to any other alderman that will co-sponsor the change to the historic preservation ordinance. And
okay.
Take it before the council and see if they will adopt those changes.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And that's the ordinance. The guidelines are derived from the ordinance. So,
but you got to start there. If you don't change the ordinance, then it's really, you'll get the cart ahead of the horse, and you won't still have the legal authority if you started with the guidelines, I think. But I'm not a lawyer, remember that. And it's free advice.
But you play one on TV. Okay. All right. All right. So I'll briefly summarize the proposal that we have in front of us regarding dining, converting, placing dining facilities on the leased space, which is proposed by the city, with tables and chairs. And at this point, barriers or barricades and planters at the perimeter and throughout. There are concerns on the part of the commissioners about the concept of blocking the streets and the sidewalks off from a historic perspective in the first place. Secondly, the material proposed for the barriers and the structure themselves is at this point not clear and not feasible. And the planters themselves also don't comply with existing guidelines. That being said, we recognize the need for responding to the community's desire, the business community's desire for outdoor dining. And I would say that the commission will be reviewing over the next several months revisions to our guidelines to adapt.
Understood.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
for your
you
time.
very much. Thanks for your time, guys.
Hope that helped, gentlemen. Yeah, thank you, guys. And please, we'll continue the conversation. I know you'll continue it with John.
Yep.
And we're happy to respond to any proposals you have on as soon as we can. So.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
All right.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Actually, that's it. Any other administrative business? I have one thing to bring up. First of all, thank you, Leslie. If she's still here, she must have jumped off. Leslie was busy and couldn't get sworn in by this meeting.
She's just muted.
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, there she is. She disappeared from my screen. So thank you, Leslie, for being here. And hello. I really appreciate your being here. Why don't you unmute yourself and say hi?
There, how's that?
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. It's been an extraordinary evening.
We know how to have fun.
Oh, you guys have just such skill. You should all be politicians.
No.
No. Anyway, thank you. And I'm looking forward to being sworn in. Thank you.
Good. We'll schedule that. And then Bobby will get in touch with you and we can give you an orientation. The next meeting is October 12th.
Okay.
But I really appreciate you being here. The only other point I would make is something I've talked about on almost every meeting. The concept of touching the guidelines and making some changes is something we need to be working on. And this is a perfect example. So I promise that I will propose some things in the next few weeks regarding sidewalk cafes, if nothing else.
Yeah, good.
Tim, I am kind of sensitive to what you're trying to say, but everything keeps getting brought back to the pandemic and
Yes.
the emergency. And I would caution us against changing the way we protect the historic character of Annapolis based on the pandemic. There have been emergencies, they will come and they will go for all time eternal. But once we change the character of downtown Annapolis, we can't go back.
I agree with Bobby 100%. I would also say comments that were made about construction and disturbances come under the same category.
Yes.
Everybody has to deal with it. I'm sorry.
Well put.
So could I say one last thing before I run away here? You know, the idea of the historic nature of Annapolis being subordinate to the commercial endeavors is just such at risk. And it's really, you know, so obvious that, you know, this could become like a precedent. And that's what I'm really fearful of, that they can turn this into like a street mall. And that would just be terrible.
Yeah.
As long as we're making these good points, I would just like to observe that I think all of us who are still present have traveled fairly widely. And I'm thinking particularly of Western Europe. They have much older buildings than us, and they have businesses in them and people live in them, and they have pedestrian streets, and what is being discussed for the market space is something that's been done for literally a few hundred years in Europe and done very well. And that's what I want to see. I don't want to see more street malls. I don't want to see more. Remember, we thought once 60 or 70 years ago, we had solved the commercial problems of the Western world by developing malls. And how many of them are vacant now?
Yeah.
There's a model for doing this and doing it the right way, and rushing along and saying we have to do it because of COVID, as Bobby said, is not the right approach. We shouldn't even consider it.
Yeah.
We should consider how to make the city better and address healthy businesses, but a healthy community comes first.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Spain, Italy, throughout have these malls, but they're not addressed by just one restaurant or two restaurants.
Yeah.
The public versus private aspect of this is something that needs to be discussed and reviewed, and all of us can participate and make our alderman and our mayor aware of our opinions. It is before city council. That I think it's on first reader. There's so the conversion of this to a private space is something that we as citizens can comment on. So that's the first stepping stone before anything we're talking about here. So I think, I'm not sure the next time it's not being discussed. It's not on the agenda on Monday night. So I don't know when it comes up next, but.
Not on the agenda for Monday night. So, but at some point, if you go into Granicus and look at legislation, you will see that it's probably also been referred to some of the
economic matters
committees. And this is an issue that you might want to consider sharing your position on with the city council directly.
Yeah, and like I said,
that is a possibility. So
yeah, and as I said at the outset of this presentation, was that there are things that we can't comment on by our, like the spaces of the tables, the number of the tables, the whole concept. The building blocks of this are. I'm glad, as I said, I appreciate they're being part of the conversation, but there are many building blocks before we get to any kind of application to HPC. We don't see an application. I don't see an application here.
Actually, do you know if they have a planner working?
They have Dan Douglas who's doing drawings.
Yeah, Dan Douglas is
Okay.
okay. All right, well,
May I say one thing unrelated?
yes, other business, yes.
Leslie, I'm very happy you're here. I'm no longer the new guy.
And
Thank you.
on that note, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Maybe we can meet October 12th in person. It's 3 weeks away almost.
Things aren't heading in the right direction for that.
Okay, well, I'll take a pulse in another week or two. I just really miss seeing all of you in person.
Does this mean I have to wear shoes?
You have to put, I have to put pants on. No.
Okay.
Yeah, Jackie?
I just wanted to say, so looking at Granicus in terms of, the Economic Matters Committee meets at 6:30 p.m. on September 28th. There's no agenda available at this point in time, but you might want to check back to see if it's on that agenda when they post it.
Okay.
Because that will be the only opportunity. Once they report out on it, it goes back to City Council for vote.
Okay.
Just
thanks.
well,
I'll also, between now and next week, I'll poll other commissions to see who is meeting in person. I know several are meeting in person, but they're smaller and they don't necessarily have a lot of public testimony.
well, the Board of Appeals has made the decision not to meet in person. They will reevaluate it at the end of November. The Planning Commission discussed it at their last meeting, but having found out that if you meet in person, you're required to wear masks and everybody's required to masks. I think that they are now at a point where they're thinking that doesn't really add to the ability to freely communicate with applicants the way they would envision it. So I think
we'll see. Well, the Board of Elections is meeting in person.
Just telling you, that's what those two are doing. So
the Board of Elections is meeting in person.
Well, sometimes some people are exempt from, and we have had 2 people that I know of who are fully vaccinated and have contracted COVID in the last couple of weeks. One.
Oh, Jackie. Okay, well, I'm keeping my hopes up, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to make anyone do anything that makes them uncomfortable. So.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And Kimberly, again, welcome. And I'll communicate with you to help summarize the statements I made.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.